Little is known about his school or personal life, something his doctor notes as topics Simon refuses to discuss. Simon has been known to self-harm, as indicated by the cuts on his left wrist when the player heals using the morphine syringes in the game. It is known that Simon lives with his mother, but no mention is made of a father or other relatives. His only friend outside of his home appears to be his friend Sophie, whom he harbors an unvoiced interest in. Simon's life before the events of Cry of Fear is hinted through dialogue and flashbacks. Simon grew up in Kirkville, his hometown, with his mother. Nothing is mentioned about his father, however, and it is unknown if Simon even met him. Through Simon's introduction quote, he claims that he has felt alone his entire life, which indicates that he felt as though he did not have many friends and lived alone most of the time, with the only company coming from his mother. It is hinted that Simon's mother is overprotective, as proven by her text messages she sends him throughout the game, likely meaning Simon did not socialize often in his younger years. According to a flashback, Dr. Purnell says that Simon has lived with mental problems for a long time, which has proven to be anxiety and depression, which Simon claims to be generated by his loneliness. In Simon's words from the In Real Life trailer, he claims that anxiety and depression controls my life every day. Simon occasionally would take a train to Stockholm and would take lonely walks around the city, most likely to help him take his mind off of being lonely. Simon is shown to be an occasional smoker, which might prove that he goes through stress. From the appearance of Simon's bag, it is implied that he is a fan of heavy metal music, and from the logo on the back of his hoodie, he seems to have attended concerts. When Simon started college, he met a girl named Sophie, who he became fond of. Simon became close to Sophie after helping her with the problems she went through, and she went as far as to say that Simon was the only male at college who would help her through her troubling times, making her life more bearable. Eventually, Simon became so attached to Sophie that he came to the conclusion that he loves her, and eventually built enough courage to confess his love to her. However, unfortunately for him, she rejected him, and even after Simon insisted that he loved her, she backed away from him, telling him that she had leave for somewhere. Sophie's rejection debilitated Simon hard. He went as far as to blaming himself that she chose to reject him and was unable to move aside from the pain of her rejection. At some unknown point, Simon obtained a switchblade. It is unknown where he obtained it or his reason for wanting one, but it is very likely that he used the blade to cut at his wrist, as it is seen throughout the game when Simon injects himself with morphine that he has scars on his wrist, indicating that he tried to commit suicide or felt the need to harm himself, possibly due to the harm that he felt from Sophie's rejection. Simon is a 19-year-old male and an individual plagued with anxiety and depression. Before the events of Cry of Fear, as seen in the first cutscene of the game, Simon was the victim of a hit and run wherein he was pinned to a building by a car while trying to help an injured man late at night. While he surprisingly survived the incident, he was crippled from the waist down and confined to a wheelchair for the rest of his life, subjecting him to further mental trauma which drove him into becoming reclusive and spiteful of his own life. Dr. Prunell was assigned as Simon's psychiatrist following the accident, and using cognitive therapy, Simon was instructed to write a book about his emotions and anxiety to get all the trauma out of his head that he had suffered from the Black Day, the name Simon gave himself about the accident. Simon authored the book as instructed, and the events of Cry of Fear began. The events unfolding being a metaphorical depiction of Simon's mind and his battles to purge his inner demons through writing, the actions taken during the game showing how well the therapy works. The Simon played as over the course of Cry of Fear is in fact a mental projection of Simon and what combats the trauma inside the real one's mind. The fate of both Simon depends on what ending is unlocked due to the actions made during the game. In the first 3 endings of the game, Simon commits suicide with slight variation on the fates of the other characters around him. The real Simon ending his own life is shown metaphorically in his mind as the projection that Simon is subjected to another nightmare, forced to work his way to the real Simon still stuck in his wheelchair. A fight ensues that ends with the fake Simon mercilessly beating the real Simon unconscious before strangling him to death, killing him in the process, and ending the game with one of the first 3 endings, with Simon leaving a declaration in his book. Ending 1. This ending is unlocked if Simon spared the life of Carcass and refused to show trust in Dr. Purnell in the asylum. The therapy fails outright and Simon develops a deep hatred for the world around him. He begins to show signs of paranoid schizophrenia, evidenced by his false belief that the world was looking upon him negatively, as well as misanthropy, and falls into a deep depressive spiral leading to self-destruction, believing Sophie, Dr. Purnell, and everyone who claimed to care about him to in reality be looking down on him because of his disability, never caring about him all along. Writing the book does not help and in fact makes Simon's depression even worse. The depressive spiral, coupled with his growing levels of misanthropy and anger over both what he sees as his portrayal by Sophie and his feeling that the doctor had both made his depression worse and was mocking him, grew too much for Simon to bear, and his psychotic rage led him to murder both Sophie and Dr. Purnell. Before committing suicide, Simon leaves a very sinister suicide note in his diary, which expresses his belief that the world was laughing at him because of his disability, explaining in a justifying sense that he was in the right to kill Sophie and Purnell. He even confesses that if it wasn't for his disability, that he would have committed worse atrocities, and even goes to attack whoever finds his remains, wishing that they suffer and become haunted after finding it. Ending 2. This ending is unlocked if Simon spared the life of Carcass, but trusted Dr. Purnell and gave him the gun he requested. In this ending, Simon shows respect for Purnell and his efforts to help Simon, but ultimately believes it was futile, coming to the resolution that his life means nothing. Simon is unable to move past the pain he feels as a result of Sophie rejecting him, and he possessively murders her out of selfish act, unwilling to leave her for anyone else to have. Before taking his own life, he leaves a suicide note in his diary, apologizing to Purnell for the result of the therapy, but he thanks him overall for actually trying to help him. Ending 3. This ending is unlocked if Simon killed Carcass but refused to give Dr. Purnell his gun. This ending is the reverse of ending 2. Although Simon feels pain due to Sophie's rejection of him and feels extreme guilt because of the damage his slip into depression and psychosis has done to her, he is able to forgive her and moves past the rejection that he endured from her, even coming to regard her as the only person who truly cared about him. However, Simon never really was able to trust Dr. Purnell, and in the end comes to the conclusion that his treatment and the book therapy made him worse, stating that all the book therapy did was made him realize how broken he was, and so he murders Dr. Purnell in a fit of self-absorbed revenge. Before taking his own life, Simon leaves a suicide note, pleading with anyone who finds his remains to not show Sophie, showing how much he cared about her in the end. Ending 4. Arguably the good ending, unlocked by killing Carcass and trusting Dr. Purnell with the gun. In this ending, Simon did not murder anyone and does not commit suicide, instead being prevented from doing so by a psychosis-induced hallucination in which book Simon then arrives. The real Simon works his way through another nightmare while in his wheelchair and engages his mental counterpart in a running gunfight, before eventually winning and shooting his own nightmarish visage to death, showing that he no longer needs it. The psychosis ends and it is revealed that Simon did not really shoot his twisted self, but rather 2 police officers who were entering his apartment. Doctors testify in court that Simon was having a psychotic break, and although he feels great guilt for killing the officers, he is instead committed to a mental hospital for what is most likely the rest of his life. Dr. Purnell continues to act as Simon's counselor and mentor, a service he is grateful for. Sophie regularly visits Simon in the hospital when she is allowed, the doctor saying that her visits are destabilizing for him. And although Simon makes note of the fact that she has found a new male friend, he wishes her nothing but the best. Simon even gives himself a happy ending in the book, which represents him coming to terms with his depression and allowing himself to start being treated. Secret ending. Waking from the brutal collision of the vehicle, Simon wakes up pinned to a wall with a man blaming his state of high on drugs being the reason of the crash. The man is then revealed to be none other than David Letterhoff, the protagonist of Afraid of Monsters. Taking in the issue, Simon expresses anger towards David, uttering, "What the fuck? You?" in a memorial way, intending that Simon knows David. Simon then threatens David, saying he'll regret this, which provokes David to run away from the scene. This ending can be achieved if the player mails the secret package to the mailbox located by the college. It is notorious that David appears exactly as he appears in Afraid of Monsters, his model not being redesigned nor being a new model, which resembles Silent Hill 2 UFO ending in which Harry Mason appeared before James Sunderland exactly as he appeared in the first game. Also, despite the fact that he apologized to Simon and talks to him, his voice is never heard. Co-op. The co-op campaign serves more as a what-if scenario, showing what could have happened if Simon had been saved from the hit-and-run accident he suffered. The campaign concludes with a scene of the police managing to reach the location where Simon was hit by the car prior to the events of the game, just moments before Simon was hit. They arrest the driver and thus prevent Simon from ever being crippled, preventing the events of the game entirely. A short scene is then shown of Simon having apparently begun a relationship with Sophie, walking down the sidewalk with her, holding hands.
Dear Diary, this is it. I have ended my miserable life. I couldn't take this shit anymore. Being trapped in a wheelchair for the rest of my damn life is just not worth it. The surgeons told me everything would be okay. They gave me hope. To crush it under the soles of their feet and watch me destroy myself. They lied to me! They didn't know what it felt like! I thought I could handle my emotions, control them, contain them, prove them all wrong, but I was just too weak. I let it slip through my fingers, out of my grip. It poisoned me. It clouded my mind. They didn't know anything. They only feel the cold touch of their knives. They gave me antidepressants. It helped me think clearly, to see things through. I took a couple of extra pills this afternoon. They showed me what I had to do in this short moment of clarity. They showed me that there was no one and nothing worth living for! They showed me how fake Sophie and my doctor were. How they were laughing at me behind their masks when I wasn't looking. Laughing at me, my legs, thinking that they are so good, that they're better than me, pretending that they care about me. It's all bullshit! The pills showed me the truth today. They always did. They opened my eyes. They gave me wisdom, and I acted upon it. So, I had to kill Sophie and my doctor. My mentor. My counselor. I had to take them down with me. They're not laughing anymore. Oh, I wish I could have taken everybody with me. But unfortunately, my situation makes that impossible. To whoever is reading this, I hope my dead body will haunt you forever. Have fun scraping my brains off the wall. Fuck you! is reading this, I'm hopefully dead. I just couldn't live this life anymore. My paralyzed legs made me worthless, and I felt like an outsider ever since the accident. Anxiety and depression controlled my life, and there was no way out of this bottomless pit. My friends looked right past me. My family abandoned me. Nobody wants a cripple, especially one that would need your help. Fucking worthless. The only person that ever tried to help me was my doctor. He tried a lot. He is the only reason this book exists. Writing it has helped me put things into perspective, I think. But in the end, it hasn't really changed anything for me. I still felt like shit. I was still all alone in solitude. For now, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. There were no choices left. I made up my mind. Not everyone can be saved. I had to end my life. And I had to take my special person with me. Sophie. I wanted to keep her with me. I wanted to keep her all for myself. I hope her body is rotting away when you find her. This is my conclusion. This is my end. Farewell, everyone. Finally, it's all over. By the time you are reading this, you will find my dead body covered in blood, with my head blown to bits. I know you might think I'm not, or wasn't, normal. I was crippled, stuck in a wheelchair, and that's why I had to die. I was broken, defect, full of emotional problems. My mind was stuck in a never-ending loop of anxiety, depression, and despair. A roller coaster with no end, and I wanted out so bad. This book writing tip was fucking bullshit. It only made me realize how truly fucked my life was. Ironic how that one person who was actually paid to help me only made it worse. Gave me that one last push, which was needed for me to end myself. And now he's dead. It's almost poetic. The only person who tried to help me was my only friend, Sophie. Please, tell her I'm sorry. I wish her all the best. Please don't show her this mess. This is my conclusion. This is my end. Farewell, everyone. I stopped myself from doing it. From committing suicide. But it didn't only leave me alive. It also left 2 police officers dead. I killed them. Shot them both. This was not supposed to happen. Doctors testified that I was having a psychosis. which means that my punishment won't be too hard for me to bear. I have to spend the rest of my life in a mental hospital, where nurses and doctors are taking care of me. They let me finish my book, and it has helped me a lot. I wrote a happy ending, just for myself. I feel better now. I am more at peace with myself, even though I'm still stuck in this wheelchair. But I accept that now. I can never forgive myself for shooting those two officers, though. But I have so many supportive people around me now, so I think I will be okay. Dr. Purnell is mentoring me and is watching my progress. I'm lucky to have him. Sophie visits me every once in a while. When the doctors let her, that is. They still think her visits are too destabilizing for me and that it hinders my progress. I keep on telling her how sorry I am for making her life miserable every time she's here. She just laughs a bit and tells me to stop being so silly. But I can see the damage I've done to her in her eyes every time she looks at me. She found a new friend, one who is there for her and treats her right. I'm happy for her, though I'll miss the good moments we've had, knowing that they'll never come back. I think this is a good time to close this book. It has changed my life forever. The end.
Entering the mind of Simon was not an easy undertaking to start with. Wading through the arcane creations that his book has summoned was a nightmare I will never be able to grasp. But I made it. I managed to destroy his creations in their passage, the book.
Waging battle against the dreadful demons of Simon's book was, without a doubt, one of the most horrifying experiences we ever encountered. But somehow, we survived it, by working together. We managed to stop Simon, by cutting off a chain of events that would have led to a sorrowful destiny.
What the fuck? You? Why? Oh, you're gonna regret this. You're gonna regret this big time! Come back here! Come back!
And that yet ends another episode of History Behind. If you enjoyed this episode tonight and you would love to see more here on History Behind, make sure to please like and share this video. It does help this channel out a lot. Make sure you guys subscribe if you haven't already, because we got more things coming up soon that I'm sure you wouldn't want to miss. And hit the bell notification so you stay up to date when a new video is available. And put in the comment section for what you would like to see next here on History Behind. That being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in. And if you're not too scared, I will see you on the next episode of History Behind.